Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Stace Gaddy to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
So excited as always. Welcome in everyone to Life Planning 101. I'm Stace Gaddy, your host, our expert, Angela Robinson from Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Stace. Happy to be here as always. And we've got a full schedule today of things that we're going to be going over. We are going to be talking about the Department of Labor's proposed fiduciary rule. Which is on the investment advisory industry, which is very interesting because typically it is not in their ballpark to be able to propose any rules on our industry. That is the SEC and FINRA, but we're going to talk about that and why it's very, very important to you and what you need to be doing about that. We're also going to have Aaron Kennedy on the show this morning, chartered financial analyst, and he's going to be giving us a market report. I know everybody is very anxious to hear what is going on with these crazy markets, and it'll be good. Even myself, I've been out of touch for the last few days. We did some mission work down in Honduras, so
nice.
To come back and to hear his point of view first thing in the morning will be wonderful. And then the third topic that we've got is what we call the most important thing you can do for a successful life plan. And what do I mean by life plan? It's just living. And so we're going to be talking about that in the last segment. You don't want to hear it, or you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. You want to hear it.
You want to hear it.
You want to hear it because there is some very good tidbits in there I think would help anybody listening to the show, myself included. I was reading back over it. I thought, I really need to take the time to do that. So I think it's going to be some really good information. And of course, we do have a couple giveaways today. We've got a trivia, so make sure you pay very careful attention.
I am today.
Yeah, during the show.
And
we're going to be giving away a free box of juicy, yum, warm donuts, all that good stuff for your mouth. And then, of course, we've got a great tip of the week that we are going to give you. So let's start with this fiduciary matter.
Let me ask you on this topic, okay? SEC, you use acronyms. We need to clarify our acronyms. That's the Securities Exchange Commission. I even know that one.
That's right.
FINRA,
we call them a very fine organization because they like to fine a lot. They have a very long name, and even if I gave you the name, you probably wouldn't even remember it, Stace. But basically, they're two governing bodies over the industry, and their whole deal is to govern the securities within the industry, and then the FINRA governs the investment advice that we give in the industry. I don't think it matters what industry that you bring up. There are certainly faults, right?
Sure.
Any industry you go out there and find there's going to be loopholes that exist, and there's going to be bad people that look for harm with those loopholes. And our industry is no different. And in fact, I think all of us remember a name, Bernie Madoff.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. It wasn't too long ago when he was a headliner of every newscaster across the nation, right? And 2008 and 2009 in our markets, there was some horrible things that happened. Our banks fell across. In fact, I still read things today that call that the Great Recession, okay, because of the impact that it had. And, during this time, there was one of the guys on the Department of Labor that had some impactful things happen to him, and so he turned his blame on the advisor that was responsible for his money. And so here we sit today where they've decided to step out, the Department of Labor, and impose what we call a fiduciary responsibility on investment advisors. Okay, and what that means, what is a fiduciary responsibility? Well, a fiduciary responsibility means is the highest of all highest responsibilities that you can have in order to make sure that someone is taken care of. So what they're trying to do is remove any potential conflicts of interest to help protect investors. That's a good thing, right? I mean, I agree with that.
Should be.
I hate that, we even live in an industry that had people such as Bernie Madoff or there's everyday advisors out there. They're just looking to make a buck and they're not worried about what's in the best interest of the client. It happens. But Vikram stated this, and I think it's so appropriate for this. God save us from the people who mean well. Okay?
Yeah.
All right? Because the Department of Labor means well, but what is happening is not good at all. And you need to be very, very attentive to this matter. Like I mentioned, I am in total agreement that the SEC and FINRA, which are our two governing bodies, need to have appropriate weight on this issue. They really do. Any of these investors that are receiving advice need to have advice that's given to them in their best interest. And the problem is the DOL's proposal is ultimately picking one path for all Americans on their retirement accounts. They're saying this is who can advise you, this is how you would pay for your advice, and this is what investments you can use. That's pretty scary, right?
Sure is.
Yes, it is. In fact, they have failed to bring about the economic impact of this, which is as much as $80 billion
Wow.
is what this is going to cost investors in the investing public. That's huge.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. So when we come back, we're going to talk about what you can do to, act on this, because it is very important. This is your retirement and whether or not you want to be able to be at the mercy of the government. So, and don't miss the rest of the show. We've got a great lineup. Of course, we've got a CFA in-house going to be talking about the markets. And the last part of the show is what you don't want to miss for your successful life plan.
You're listening to Life Planning 101. Keep it right here. Welcome back in, everyone, to our second segment of Life Planning 101. I'm Stace Gaddy. Angela Robinson is our expert. Good morning again, ma'am.
Good morning, Stace. And we were talking about a very in-depth and concentrated subject. There was no humor in this show at all. Talking about the Department of Labor and how they are trying to impose, who can advise you, how you will pay for advice, and what investments you can use. And I basically call they've already implemented the government retirement account, so your GRA. So this is your government investment advice coming out. And, like I mentioned, they're not doing this out of a place that's vindictive. They're doing this out of a place that they want to add more responsibility on investment advisors, but they're doing it in the wrong way. And, there's a great research out there from Brookings Institution and the Progressive Policy Institute. We're going to have this online, and Stace, help me out. It's KATX.com and KWBY.com.
KATXradio.com and KWBYradio.com.
Okay, radio.com. And you can go on here and download this because it breaks down that $80 billion number that we talked about that this is going to cost investors. And it talks about why. What about the timing in the markets? What about the rebalancing and the saving for retirement? And basically, at the end of the day, it could leave up to 7 million people without anyone to help them with their investments. 7 million people. So
and why are they doing that other than, mass government control? But what's underneath that?
They want to, they aren't seeing it from that perspective. They're thinking a robo-advisor can come in and help someone.
Okay.
Well, I want you to think about it. We've talked about on the show several times about emotional attachment to your money. Is a computer going to stop you from doing something you don't need to do?
Mm-mm.
No, they're not going to do that. So, it is very important, but you do have a choice. You can definitely speak up, and I encourage you to do that. Anybody that's got a retirement account or retired, you need to do this. You need to write your congressman. There's a website. It's called www.mysavingsmychoice.org, and I encourage you to go to it, and it doesn't take you 2 seconds to get on there, and they'll send the letter to your congressman, and you can read what you're sending them, or you can do something handpicked if you want to do that. But it's mysavingsmychoice.org. Very, very important. So let's switch topics here. We do have Aaron Kennedy in the house with us, and he's going to be giving us a market update. Like I mentioned, I'm extremely excited to hear what's going on in the market because I've been out of touch for the last few days, and I know there's been a lot of volatility. I read a deal this morning. It says the only good news about the market last week is that it wasn't open on Monday. So Yeah. So, Aaron, what do you have for us today?
Good morning, everybody. That's pretty much true. It's been a pretty rocky road. Looking back just over about the last 30 days, we can see that the market's come down from its high by about 12%. And that's just the U.S. markets. If we look at emerging markets, they're down almost 22% from their highs. So, it's quite a bit of shock out there from people believing that just because the market's up, there's no risk, which in fact, the higher the market goes, the more risk is actually out there. But other than just the pricing of the markets, kind of give you an idea of what's happening right now. The biggest driver recently in all this volatility has been China and interest rates. And the deal with China is they just lowered their currency, and then they started putting out some bad economic numbers. And the thing with China is nobody ever believes the numbers or the things that they put out there. They put out only what they want us to know. So when they eventually did put out some pretty poor economic numbers, the whole world is saying, wait a minute, it must be a lot worse than what they're telling us. And the market's reacting. So if China's down, and we're seeing all the other countries in Asia going down, and Japan's still struggling, and Europe, although they're coming out of recession, they're still struggling a little bit. The U.S. is the only real growing economic factor in the whole world. So it's a little bit scary, and that ties into what happens today or this week. The Fed's going to come out and make a decision whether to rise interest rates or not, and this is weighing on a lot of people's heart. Whether you're buying a new home. You sure don't want interest rates going up. These banks or companies issuing bonds, they don't want to be issuing bonds when interest rates are going up. They don't want that higher interest rate payment. And the biggest thing out there is our energy companies. Believe it or not, energy's in a pretty weak market right now. And oil just recently has gone from the 50s back down to the high 30s. So, we're just seeing volatility everywhere. And with energy as low as it is, and these energy companies, it's coming time for them to reissue their debt. And if they're having to do that at a higher level, it's going to spell some trouble for some individual companies. But in the broad picture, we're probably going to see some companies being bought out and some mergers. And in the long run, all the bad news usually just reinforces the strongest companies in the market.
Yeah. So if we're sitting here and it's a couple years from today, and we're looking back over this little piece of time in the markets, and we talk about it being very volatile, so it seems very scary. Is it a time for investors to stick to their disciplines, or do they need to change their strategy?
No, you definitely need to stick to to what you're doing. Usually when you look back at time, you're going to find a time and say, oh, I wish I would have bought there. And this feels like one of those times. Even if the market goes down another 10-15% from here, we're buying today at a 15% discount, which is very good.
Yeah. So it's a time to be bullish in the market.
It is definitely more time to be bullish, prudently bullish. You want to be investing when there's blood in the streets. When everybody's throwing confetti in the air, it's time to get out, and we've been seeing a lot of that.
Right. Well, that's good. I remember a few months ago, you and I were just sitting there keeping our fingers crossed that something would happen with the markets and they'd shake up a little bit. So they are shaking up a little bit, and they probably will continue to do so, especially with a potential government shutdown in the next month if they can't come to an agreement on the social issues that are out on the table and then we've got the debt ceiling that we're approaching rapidly, and so there's more of this to come. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, there's tons of news and tons of uncertainty, and the one thing the market does not like is uncertainty. So it will show up in the volatility of what's going on in the market.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Aaron. You're always insightful with your information, and we are so blessed to have him here in our small town.
Yes.
Having one of those guys that manages the money on Wall Street in the small town of Eastland, Texas. That's awesome, and of course we're happy to have him every day in our office, and we do some internships with Tarleton with Aaron. So that's a pretty cool thing to have. So thanks again for being on the show this morning. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the most important thing you can do for a successful life plan, and what does that mean exactly. So you don't want to miss it again on our show.
You're listening to Life Planning 101 on KATX and KWBY Radio. We're back right after these messages. Welcome back in, my friends. You're listening to Life Planning 101 here on KATX Radio and also KWBY Radio. I'm Stace Gaddy. I want to remind you, if you miss any of today's program, you can go to katxradio.com or kwbyradio.com, and we have all of the programs in their entirety archived there, plus the accompanying articles. You can read them. Again, if you miss anything here, go on our websites and get that. And also on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock, we will rebroadcast this program. Check it out if you miss anything from today. Angela Robinson, our expert, good morning again. Our final segment this morning.
Final segment. And I do encourage people to go back on this show and, again, remember the DOL, the Department of Labor that we talked about earlier, and the fiduciary rule and how that could impact your retirement. So go back and check that out if you missed that segment, because it is extremely important that you know about this matter and that you are active in writing your congressman and going to My Savings, My Choice, and doing that doesn't take but a quick second. And of course, we had Aaron's market report in the show earlier too, which was incredible. I know everybody has their ears and eyes on what's going on with the markets because of all this volatility. So we're going to finish up the show today on a little lighter note. I say that it's still to do with money, and it's to do with a little dirty word, but it's really what our potentially save your bacon tip of the week is, and that's maintaining a budget. And we hear that.
Yes.
We hear that, and it sounds like such a dirty word. But,
budget.
It's not in the aspect that you're used to hearing budget. So give me just a minute, and I'll explain that. But what I want to start with is letting you know that most people, and listen to this statistic, GoBankingRates surveyed that 1 in 4 Americans, their number one daily thought is money. 1 in 4. Isn't that awful? And I'm assuming that's probably worry about money. And 2 in 5 Americans feel their biggest challenge is either sticking to a budget or saving for retirement. That's big. That's really big. And that's why we want to bring this front and center on how to be able to help you. So I'm going to give you a quick tip because, a lot of people may listen to this and say, everything in my life is tight. It's tied up. I can't change anything. There's no way that I can do this. And Henry Ford had a great statement. He said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're correct. Right?
Right.
Okay. So I want you to think you can for just a minute and hear this out. Because if you were to take your gross income that you have in the year, and I want you to take that number, whatever that is, and I want you to say 60% of it is over here, and that's committed expenses. And, if you're overspending, it really doesn't matter what you're overspending on. You're overspending, right?
Right.
Okay, so we're going to take 60% of that, and that's going to be dedicated towards committed expenses. That's those non-negotiable basic expenses that we all have, right? Our houses, our food, our clothes, our bills, and our loan payments. Now, if you're paying for DirecTV so you don't miss that one Cowboys game a year that they only air on the certain channel, if you have DirecTV, they don't even do it on Dish. Okay, that might be more of a luxury rather than a committed expense, right? You might be able to cut that one out. But these are those committed expenses, the things that we have to have, the taxes that we have to pay on everything, which are going up, right? Our insurance, the charitable contributions that you make, whatever it is, and that fits in that 60% category. And then everything else is going to be left in a 40% category. And that 40% category, we're going to have a priority list for that, okay? And so this is just like starting from scratch, as if we're going to make a new cake up today, and I don't care what you've been spending on or how you've been spending it, this is how you need to look at prioritizing things. First things first, the young person you are today is going to be the only person to take care of the old person you're going to be someday.
Hey, man, real life right there.
That's real life, right? Okay, and if you're thinking Social Security is going to be the answer, it's going down, it's going to be changing, it's going to be taxed back away from you. It should not be a major contributor. Even with the people that we have today that are in retirement, most of them do not rely on their Social Security to be their main form of retirement income. It's a supplement, but it's not their main form of retirement income. So first things first is you need to figure out what you need to be saving, and you need to talk with your advisor to be able to find out what that amount is and to be able to put that back. The next thing is having that emergency plan in place, right, before it happens. You know, a lot of us, and I hate to say this, but so many people that we sit down with the first time we ask them, okay, well, what do you like to keep in your checking and savings account? And they'll maybe have 1 month of income in their savings account. Okay, well,
wow.
What happens if they lose their job? You know, what happens if your air conditioner goes out? Yeah, it's 10 grand to replace an air conditioner, okay? So, you know, having 3 to 6 months of income set aside. And then your savings to spend account. So then you've got something to be able to save to spend on at a later point in life. And then the rest of that leaves your fund money. So play with that. Play with that 60-40 rule. Real simple, okay? But play with it. And I think it'll be able to give you some eye-opening experiences. And remember, we're available, life planning at Kennedy-financial.com. So you can definitely ask us questions about any of that. You can go back and visit these again on KATXradio.com or KWBYradio.com and see this whole article. It's called I Don't Budget Because, a proper article, right? And read it because it should be able to help you out some. We're going to end with our trivia today, and I want to go back to the DOL rule on this. And I want you to think about how many people would potentially go without investment advice if that DOL fiduciary rule goes through. If you remember that, email us, lifeplanning@Kennedy-financial.com. A warm box of donuts you don't want to miss. I'll even throw in a couple bear claws in there for you. So
I think I remember, but I'm ineligible.
Yes,
darn it.
You are ineligible. You can't do that. So, but we thank you as always for listening to our show. Again, my name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services here in the great town of Eastland, Texas, and we're proud to be a Texan and proud to be a citizen of the United States of America, and we appreciate you, and God bless you all.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much. And also special thanks to Aaron Kennedy for joining us today. Folks, that's a wrap for Life Planning 101. Be sure and tune in next time.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through VSR Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisor and member of FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services is not owned or controlled by VSR Financial Services Incorporated.